board members who were there by virtue of the election produced
Yes.
in 2008 and 2009.
Yes, election.
And I'm assuming you all know these neighbors?
They need no introduction.
They need no introduction. You need no introduction.
Well, I wasn't
Let that be a lesson.
sure.
Grace, do you know who these folks are?
Yes, now I do, because everybody told me to know.
There you go.
I don't know if everybody knows everybody.
I would also like you to know that 6 of the 9 people who created and produced the elections in 2008 and 2009 were also in this room. So there's a considerable amount of expertise for us to draw from. The purpose of the exercise tonight is to talk about what this bizarre thing we're talking about doing entails. Just to give you a little background. Does scooch it down there.
Do you want me to sign?
Everybody can sign. Because then I'll be forging your signature for checks. Once upon a time, in 1984, an organization, a state public authority, a public benefit corporation was born, and it was called RIOC, Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation. And it was created under state law, the Chapter 899 of the Unconsolidated Laws of the State of New York for the year 1984. And it produced many fine and wonderful things about how to operate this community, except what it didn't do was include a single person living on this island in the decision-making process. So in 2002, a group of us from RIRA went to see George Pataki and complained bitterly. And we got that meeting through our then state senator, Olga Mendez, who was a buddy of George's, and just on the verge of shifting her allegiance from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. And what we asked for was an elected RIOC board of directors. What we got was a board of directors still all appointed by the governor, but composed of a majority of island residents. 9-person board, 5 people would have to be residents of the island. Let me say that again. Residents of the island. Olga shifted her allegiance to the Republican Party in the next election, got 20% of the vote. And Jose Serrano has been our state senator ever since. It tells you just a little something about the voting habits of Roosevelt Island. Neither here nor there. So, in 2007, brand new DHCR Commissioner Deborah Van Amerken, brand new RIOC President Steve Shane, invited me into their office and said, would you be interested in creating a device in which the Roosevelt Island community could be heard in the selection by the governor of this RIOC Board of Directors? And I said, sure. And then I said, what I would like is a memorandum of understanding so that there's something on paper that will codify this arrangement for future generations, future governors, future Roosevelt Islands. And they said no. So the Maple Tree Group, which was honchoing this process, had a decision to make whether to jump off a cliff and do this election anyway, with no guarantees whatsoever, other than from this suggestion from the RIOC president and the DHCR commissioner, or not. And we did it. We jumped off a cliff. We created this, we've called it an election, we've called it a plebiscite, we've called it a referendum. I don't know what to call it. So we called it an election because everybody knows what an election is. And we did the first one in 2008, and 10 people ran for the office, representing just about every building complex on Roosevelt Island. Now, you may have read in the last Main Street Wire that this is terribly skewed to River Cross. Well, let me tell you, democracy is a funny thing. When we ran the 10 people, 3 of the candidates lived in River Cross. One of them, Faye, moved from this building to River Cross. She gets to do that. So now 4 of the board members live in River Cross. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? The electorate will decide. Ain't up to us. But what we created was a precedent that Roosevelt Islanders would get to choose the people to make the decisions for them. Got to be a good thing. And we did it again in 2009. And as a result of that, 6 of the 9 board members were elected by this community, with one, David Kraut, a resident of the island, but who refused to participate. And that's the way it stood until last June. So, what happened in last June is that through a system that I still don't understand, an island worker, somebody who was an executive director of a school on the island, got appointed to the board. Now, everybody else who's been appointed to the board has had to go through a lengthy vetting process by the state of New York, through filling out forms this thick, through going through the state police. We've never found out whether Sal Ferreira had to go through that process or not. We don't know. All we know is that his name was put forward by his state senator in Brooklyn, and that our assemblyman and our state senator were never consulted and found out about it after the fact. As you know, if you've been reading ever since last June, this has rankled a great many people. And the question was, how do we respond? What do we do now? We've got a brand new governor. Actually, we're 2 governors down the line from the governor who commissioned the process in the first place. And what we have heard from Andrew Cuomo is absolutely nothing. So again, we're asking ourselves, do we jump off a cliff? What we've decided through the committee that has been responsible for codifying what we want to do, and through the RIOC Common Council, which has voted for these, is to do 2 elections in 2012. Why 2? Well, the thing is, the seats that we're talking about, the RIOC board seats, are not determined by the individual, but by the seat. Each seat has a term of office. And so somebody can be elected to fill a seat that only has a year left on it, and that's happened. So we find ourselves with three board members who by next February, their seats will have expired. And the question is, well, should we do one election next November on Election Day, which is usually a dandy day to do an election, or do we try to finesse the system now to try to prevent this governor from filling those seats without any input from this community? And the determination was that yes, we'll do an election on February 7th, and yes, we'll do an election on November Election Day, which is also a presidential election day, and a terrific way for getting people out to the polls. But what we need now is some understanding of who is interested in filling this incredibly important job, and informing those folks what the job entails. And what I've asked the board members to do this evening is to speak on 3 different issues. Campaigning, because this is an election. The vetting process, because you have to satisfy both the state of New York, and in the case of those who are recommended by the city of New York, to be approved, all kinds of financial considerations, you know, have you been arrested, that sort of thing. I mean, the kind of thing you would expect the state of New York to ask you. And then third, what's the job? What do you do? How much time does it take? That's what I'd like to have these folks talk about. And we haven't talked about any particular order, but why don't we take the 3 issues in order and see what folks have to say, and then, of course, we'll take your questions as well. Does anybody want to kick it off in terms of how do you get yourself elected?
Could you introduce?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. Margie Smith has been a vice president of RIRA, and she was obliged to quit RIRA, obliged to quit Mapleton Group, and obliged to quit the co-op board of her building when taking on the job as a RIOC board member. Howard Pallavi has also been a member of RIRA and is a board member. Faye Christian was my neighbor in this building, now lives in River Cross and is a board member. Michael Shimazaki is a Manhattan Parker and a member of the board as well. And that's what we want. So, how much campaigning did you find it necessary to do when you put on that first election? Because you were all there for that one. Was it onerous? Did you feel that there was a really contested election going on?
Well, we did have, it was the first election, and also coincided with the election cycle. So we had quite a number of candidates running. I treated it very much as an election. I think most people did. relatively new on the island compared to a number of the other candidates. So I was putting up posters and standing by the subway and attending various events. And in preparation for running, I made sure I had good background. By good, I mean complete background to the extent I could manage it regarding how the corporation is doing, so I can get to be sure to attend as many of the RIOC meetings as I became aware of. And gathered all the background materials to review. Rick's blog is very helpful in that regard, that he has a number of the founding documents posted. But also on the RIOC website, you'll find it's a little bit tucked out of the way that they have something to our mission. If you go there, you'll see some of their foundation documents, such as the bylaws and that sort of thing. And also, if you look on the RIOC website, you'll find archived prior year's minutes and some other board materials, which might be useful just to get up to speed with some of these issues. For me, I prepared basically any questions might come up with me to have some sort of background on it. The difficulty I found is that, of course, these issues are complicated, and the population of the island has a variety of different interests and center and can basically contest any one solution for many of these issues.
Well, it was the first election, so I would say that most of the my campaigning was basically done by RIOC, because in the sense that they organized everything, they had debates, they gave us lessons, we had information, they really gave us detailed information and training. So I think what was most difficult is entering the position with, at least I felt it was going to be difficult, not having business, or I thought it might be a drawback for me. But like in anything else, all it takes is a little bit of homework, and you become a little more educated as you go along. But I found it easy. I didn't find it too difficult. I collected the 50 votes. I put up posters, and I spoke to people, and I asked them to vote for me. And I was honest with the information as far as this is a position. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And basically, it was just learning it. You learn as you go along, as in anything else. You get a new job, even if you think you know the job, there's always going to be something that you have to learn, something you have to do. And I think that most of us, we all became, we're very good, we work well together. I think all of us had the island's interest in it, and it was, my whole idea was having the idea that we would have a hand in our future. And as we go along, we find the island is not as easy as we thought it might be. There's a lot of rocks in the road, and there's a lot of judiciary things that we have to keep in mind. And as you can see, Howard has these papers. I got it sitting in front of him now, and sometimes they change. So I think it's just best to enter this whole, if you're interested in running it, to just know that there's a lot that you have to learn, there's a lot of things you have to do. And they did have us jumping the rope as far as background checks and going everywhere, fingerprinting and filling out mounds of papers. There were plenty of papers to complete, but now it's gotten easier. I don't know whether or not it's because we have been in the system for a while, and now we can do it online. So it's faster now than it was in the past. But the first time it took me forever to complete all the forms. But now it's easy. And I think it's because of the computer, and they have everything on the computer now, and you don't have to do every tiny little thing anymore if there's something to change. So I think your biggest worry would be campaigning, which I think will be easy in the sense that you make yourself known. And not as many people, you would be surprised though, I found that not as many people, at least I felt at first, maybe now more people are interested now. I felt we didn't have enough people interested. It would have been nice to have more people running, and I think a I personally felt that the island wasn't as interested, and so it was nice having the opportunity to run. But it's very tiring, lots of meetings. As you can see, I'm not as beautiful as I used to be. And I'm always tired, it seems. But you know, there's a lot going on, and some people just have more time, and maybe it's just because I'm a teacher and I have tons and mounds of paperwork, but I do know that there's plenty of meetings, so you're going to be busy, definitely busy.
How many meetings when you say try?
Well, we have to, if you think about every committee that we have, if you're interested in really knowing what's going on, you can try to make them all. We have the real estate, as you know, we have the governance, we have the operations, the governance, and which is part of operations. We have audit. We have so there's five.
So four committees.
4 committees. So with that, if you're going to try to make them all, it's pretty time consuming. But that's the only way that you're going to be knowledgeable. It's always better if it's firsthand than if you just get it by word of mouth or hear from a member later. But I find that I don't think, at first I didn't attend everything. I thought, oh, I'll just attend one committee. But then I found that I wasn't as knowledgeable, so then I began to try to make every meeting that I could possibly make. And I think we became more bonded. I think we bonded more, attending more, the more meetings we attended, because this way we knew exactly what was going on. And we had a better idea and a better way to vote.
What were the committees?
Operations, governance, real estate, and audit.
And what?
Audit.
Well, the first time around, I was asked by Adam and Sheridan folks to run, appointed by the mayor, and then the election process came out. And what was interesting about that was I had asked, because of the sitting board members, they said, well, do we need to run? And we were told specifically, no. And then I was told my term was up because I hadn't run. So they used that as an excuse as to why I was removed from the board, but there were a number of contentious issues going on. So then I was off the board for a while, so then everyone asked me to run, so I ran the second time around. As far as the campaigning part of it goes, the signatures, that I had the boss kicking me in the tail, and she went, my wife, and she got the signatures and made sure that I attended all the meetings because she was yelling at me that I had a community service to do. So I was by executive decision forced to be on the board. For those of you who are married, you know what I mean. The campaigning part of it was mainly just going to the debates and having discussions with folks in the island about what their issues are. The activities on the background checks, I'm in some respects a little different than the other folks because I have to go through background checks continually, all the time for various other government agencies. So I get DNA scanned, retina scanned, fingerprinted, dental scan all the time for various work.
Because it's so dangerous to live and work on Roosevelt Island.
No. As far as the work on the board goes, the difficulty level really depends on what's going on. For example, the tramway initiative was an extremely complicated project from a variety of standpoints. There were legal issues regarding, air rights in the city, permitting problems. There were all kinds of engineering challenges as to what could and couldn't be done. We had to evaluate the vendors as to whether we thought it was possible to complete the project. We had to, eventually you kind of give them a hard time to make sure that the staff put in the correct legal provisions in the contracts, and that things got done. And if you wanted to really be able to ask the various vendors deep questions, you had to do a lot of time online, studying, looking up the companies, looking at what their history was, studying the engineering aspects of aerial tramway construction and different types of trams. So that was a difficult project. Other things you vote on are things as easy as replacing the garbage cans, or other issues are more difficult. For me personally, like some of the designs for the park, my wife reminds me of that, aesthetically challenged. So I'm trying to mainly restrict it to, for example, how are they building the platform, and how is the civil engineering components of it, questioning the company about the financial models, those areas, and leaving some of the aesthetic areas of what's people think is more artistically pleasing to other members of the board who have better artistic taste than I do. But the challenge is that are you prepared to be on the board? There's such a wide range of things that you have to vote on, and there's no real line item. It's either a yes or a no. So you can say, well, you can suggest certain things and try to get things changed. But like I said, it can range anywhere from the financial statements to what type of stores, which are subjective kind of questions, to some complicated contract issues, to engineering a $20 million, $25 million civil engineering project for the tramway, or looking at underwater photographs of the potential docking area and trying to figure out, well, do we think that the estimates of the multiple vendors are accurate, that they'll be able to complete the project? Can anyone walk in on the board and say that they're ready for all those types of questions? No. Can you talk to your fellow board members? Can you research online? A few things like that as things are moving along. That's basically what you have to do, because you're never ready for everything.
Just for complete disclosure, you should know, Michael is an IT engineer, Faye is a teacher, Howard is an actuary, Marty's a businesswoman. We also have, when Jonathan Calkin was on the board, he's a lawyer. We have a pediatrician, Kathy Green, on the board. And Sal Ferrara is an educator. Is that it?
David Crowder.
David Crowder, what is he?
I'm not sure. He's
Retired.
retired.
Okay. Also, you should know that we are attempting in February to fill 3 seats. Am I correct, Faye and Howard, your seats have expired?
Mine will expire.
In December.
December 27th.
You circled that in red. And then David Pratt's seat has also expired. So those are the 3 seats we're attempting to fill in this first election. And then by the second election in November, the other seats will have expired.
No, they expired the following June, July 2013. Those are being done in the right order, or in the safer order.
Keep in mind that there is, between the time we put these elections on and the time it takes to do the vetting and the time the governor in his infinite wisdom makes the appointment, there's a period of time that's indeterminate. And so to put on the elections either immediately after seats expiring or prior to the seats expiring we've simply found as part of the process, because the time is just so amorphous. We just don't know when it's going to happen.
Another problem is that the Senate has to approve the appointment, and the Senate meets for the first half of the year, so that's another tricky issue.
What was interesting is the first time around, I was appointed by the mayor's office. So I had to go through fingerprinting and background check and everything else to the mayor's office. Then I had to go through a separate fingerprinting and background check and everything else with the state police. And I said, well, you can contact, here's a number at the Pentagon, at the DOD, and they have everything I've ever done for the last 20 years. And they said, no, we're going to do our own. And the city and the state wouldn't even use the same fingerprint card or the same background check material. You had to fill it out twice. Use of our tax dollars.
Which is why New York State is admired for its efficiency the world over.
So if you go for a mayoral seat, you're going to have to fill it out twice.
Well, the thing is, you don't know what seat you're going for. You're just going for a seat. And as you know, Howie got your seat.
Do we know the ones that are opening, which seats are those?
They're, let's see, Martin and Howie have the city seats right now, so only one city seat is up for this cycle. The it expires next year, I'm sorry, 2013, but the election will be in.
So which,
FYI, that's Ashton Barfield, who is our logistician and keeps us honest.
Well, no, I just sort of know more of the facts than others, that's all, not all of the facts.
which of the three seats that are?
David Kraut's Howie's, which will expire on the 27th of December, and Faye's, which expired in May of 2010.
Again, it's a bizarre system. One of the things we would very much like to do is to regularize these terms of office so that they're staggered, but not staggered all over the map, staggered in two groups, 3 and 3, or 3 and 4. Right.
And would you say have Howard and Faye decided to run again? Did this,
I will win.
and Howard?
I'm applying to, I'm pretty sure. All right.
He's in.
Probably yes.
Well, we've gotten an idea of what the campaigning is about. RIRA puts on several set thingies.
Can I say a couple of words?
Talk about thingies.
Yeah, mine was a little different because there was already an election, so I was there for the second time around. So people were already familiar with what was going on. And I went for a city seat. And what Michael said is exactly true. You go through this whole big, huge thing of 50 pages worth of questions, and you get fingerprinted and you talk to the police and everybody else, and then you do it again for the state. Then you have to meet with the chair, the president, or the head, or whatever you call it, the Senate Finance Committee, and you have to get interviewed by Howard. As a matter of fact, you got to go to Albany, right?
Yeah. I didn't figure out a way out of it fast. So
Right.
I was interviewed by Democratic and Republican committee.
He said Senator
Chair.
Perkins.
Senator Perkins and Ratzinger. And then met with the committee.
They go into your background years and years and years. They look up from a financial point of view, from every organization you've ever belonged to, anything at all that you've ever done, they know about, and you discuss it with them. And most of it's fine. They just want to make sure they know it all. They don't really make too many judgments. Then they look at what you're a part of on the island, and as Matt said, I had to get myself off of a lot of things that I was on. I didn't do much in terms of campaigning because I've lived on the island for 30 years, and before this I had been vice president of RIRA, so I had some name recognition for being in the wire and all that. But you put your statement in the wire, so you'd be writing something up telling everybody what your points of view are, then you go to a candidate's night, maybe 2 candidates' night, where people can ask you questions. And so if you really sort of have to want to do this. And it's, I think, pretty important to make the decision that you're going to do a lot of work, because there's a lot of things to study, a lot of things to understand. It's especially difficult for us as a group because there is a law that says if 5 of us are together in a room, it's automatically a board meeting. So you can never really get together as a group to hash ideas out or talk about things. You always have to be in separate units, except at a board meeting. So that makes the communication difficult. It's also difficult because some things get done during the day, and anybody who's got a full-time job is going to miss some meetings. There's an audit committee meeting, Wednesday, a real estate committee meeting, Wednesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you have a 9-to-5 job, you miss that.
You'll be happy to know that the Real Estate Advisory Committee is open to the entire public, except for the fact that it's in executive session every single time, so we can't go.
All right, well, that's not exactly true. It hasn't been in every single time, but since they've been in negotiations with Island House,
For
it
as
has.
long as
It
I
was
can
not,
remember.
no, every single meeting was open for the retail lease, and there were many of them when Jonathan had it. And then the last one, that first one that Howard had, he gave a rundown, an update on where we were and stuff. Then we had to go into executive session because we were talking about negotiations.
Right. For you folks to understand, executive session, there are certain things that you're not allowed to discuss in public. One item is personnel issues, because if you're talking about, employees, then as a matter of privacy, things like that, you can't discuss that in public. You're not allowed to take votes in businesses and conduct it. It's just discussing things that are in public. Things that we're discussing or reviewing contracts that we eventually vote on, but we need to discuss because we don't want the vendors to know what the other positions are and stuff like that.
Right.
You don't discuss that in open because then everyone, the competing vendors would know what they're doing. So there are times when things are closed, but when down there, no votes are taken, it's just informational, or it's just discussing like a personnel problem, which you can't talk about, because that would be releasing private information on that person. So there's nothing really, super secret going on, it's just protecting the privacy of staff sometimes.
Sure, your question.
Yeah, the issue about 5 or more of you meeting together, is it possible that you can meet but you can't take a vote?
Now, if you're gonna do it, then it's officially a board meeting. So you have to send out the notification to the public, you have to have the agenda, and at the times that we were doing it, you had to videotape it and go through the whole 9 yards. I personally think so what?
Yeah, there are
We'll do it anyway, but it
exceptions.
gets more formal that way, and then some people can make it, some
So
people
there are
can't.
no cocktail parties with
Okay.
5
No,
or 6?
actually, there are some exceptions.
You do
like-
want to drink it.
Yeah, there's some social events, if something
Yes.
is declared particularly a
You can't
social
conduct
event,
business.
or if it's particularly declared a training event, like when you go to public officers accountability, there's some required state training things you have to go to. In that case, we're not actually executing board business, we're there, being trained on something.
Could you speak to that, the training that you get to do the job? That'd be interesting.
It's basically a full-day session where they go through the Public Accountabilities Act, Public Authorities Accountability Act came into play several years ago. So the state, 2006, the state structured a training class for everybody that's on the board of the public authority. So you go through that and you have the opportunity to ask questions of anything you don't understand. They tell you what the committees are for, they tell you what your duties are for, they tell you about your fiduciary responsibility, and they pretty much bring you up to speed on what it is you have to do.
Yeah, it's basically a lecture format, and you're in a big room with like the board of MTA, the board of Triborough, and the LOCO, and the other public authorities in the state.
And you can do a refresher of those if you want to, and when something new happens, if there's an amendment to the law or whatever, they have in training.
Right, so it was a public authorities format that was passed after most of us took office, and so there was a training for that. And that established the authority's budget office, which is the traditional city controller. And so they have oversight over authorities, they've changed the reporting requirements that we have for our financial terms. And they created an acknowledgement of fiduciary duties and responsibilities. Now, if you're a board member, one of the things that you will do is execute an oath of office, in which you assume fiduciary responsibility for the workings of the corporation. Based on that, you follow the open meetings law, and you're careful about the limits of your authority, careful about not breaching the responsibilities that you have to this entity. So that was the premise for why we needed to resign from other local organizations, is that we compromise our responsibilities.
Keep in mind that these are relatively new requirements within public authorities. Once upon a time, the RIOC Constitution had a provision that the RIOC president would be required to run for a seat on the RIOC board. We eliminated that before the state eliminated it from their side because of the potential conflict of interest. But it's interesting that even something as innocuous as serving in the RIOC, Public Residents Association, is considered out of bounds for a board member. Board members, after all, are responsible for a $30 million a year budget?
18.
20?
21 revenues, 18 expenses.
Right. And for people who do business with the state, the reverse is true as well. Because we are considered public officers of the state of New York, the corporation that I work for prohibits me from doing any work with the state of New York to give the appearance of conflict. So I do most of my work with the federal government. But if we do, the company does business with the state of New York and the city of New York, but I'm prohibited from doing any work just for a conflict of interest.
And I was on the Western Task Force also, and I had to resign that position.
Now, the RIOC Board of Directors meets monthly. This month, their meeting was canceled. The wasn't a sufficient agenda.
There was nothing to vote on, so.
What's the actual number of meetings per year?
It's supposed to be 12, I believe, it'll be 7 this year.
It's supposed to be 8.
No, but we had originally said 12, and then they asked us to compromise and do a July, August kind of thing. But there's really supposed to have one every month. We've never done that. This year, I mean, we
Well, they used to
compromised.
say on the website that the board met 8 times a year. That's what it said. It used to say on the website.
That's